Today, through this WHO and working with Ministries of Health, as we are the technical arm of Ministries of Health, and through our global initiative members for emergency surgical care, and we formed these partnerships and collaborations, and today this program is in 38 countries of the world, in low and middle income countries, as you can see the countries here. One of the objectives was, we have centers of excellence, WHO collaborating centers they are called, which is you work for 2 years at those centers, and it takes 1 year of application, and then only you get the center. And for the first time, I'm very pleased to share with you, for the first time in the world, we have a WHO collaborating center for emergency and essential surgical care, and this is in Ifkara. It's a district hospital which is designated, it's a St. Francis Hospital, which is a mission hospital, but it was designated by the government as a district hospital. And it's one of the biggest district hospitals there. For about 400 kilometers, they do not have any other hospitals nearby, but this is the hospital where they come for all the major surgeries. And we are setting up another collaborating center, which is in Mongolia, which should be through before the end of this year. Now, WHO needed to have some surgical standards because a lot of guidelines are there, a lot of tools are there, but most of the time what happens is that everybody, what was proposed to us is that most of the health centers and hospitals, everybody has good intentions. People come from Australia, UK, US, everybody bring their guidelines, people bring with all good intentions, best practices, etc. But what happens is that sometimes in the very same hospital, there are various best practices, various guidelines. The nurses sometimes are confused, and there are several, and maybe sometimes simultaneously within a week of a gap, another country guidelines come, and it goes on, and everybody means well. So they said WHO should have some standard guidelines, very basic, on surgery, anesthesia, trauma, burns, etc. So for the first time, the surgical care at the district hospital this manual was developed. And to match with the manual, one cannot go to the Ministries of Health to make a case for surgical care by taking a 600 pages manual, heavy manual, and saying you can go through the chapter 1, it's for policymakers, the chapter 15 is for anesthesia, and well, there's obstetric section on chapter 7 and 8. You can't go on like that. So therefore, you must have all heard about the integrated management for childhood illness, IMCI. So there had to be quickly something in parallel, and there was nothing on surgery. So we had integrated management for childhood illness, we had integrated management for adulthood illness, we had integrated management for pregnancy and childbirth, but there was nothing on surgery. So then we thought this should be good. It could be another integrated management on emergency and essential surgical care. So this was that CD that you see, the small one, that is the integrated management for emergency and essential surgical care. What does it have? It defines best practices in all these disciplines, including disasters. The role of WHO is, of course, to set policies for ensuring quality and safety through education and training. So the research tool. Now, the problem was that everybody verbally said, this is the situation in district hospital, this is the situation, it's so bad, surgical services are not available, but it was all verbal. No country had done a situation analysis themselves to assess, to identify the gaps. So in that 2007 Ministry of Health, Tanzania, when we held the Global Initiative meeting, they said, give us a tool which would take very quick snapshot and at the same time does not have big investment, because a research survey would take a huge amount of investment. Can we have a quick snapshot? And it should be done by WHO, make a tool. So therefore, with the Global Initiative members put together, a group got together, and therefore the situation analysis tool was formed, which you see on your right. Why does the tool, how does it help? First of all, it is entered into a WHO global database, which is for emergency surgical care. the database is not shared by any NGO or one-to-one sharing with another NGO or academy or anything. It is shared with the Ministry of Health and WHO country office to make a case that this is a situation in your country. It takes about 20, half an hour to complete. It can be done by several ways, but not online without a password. So it is password protected. So it's not something that is just put online and anybody can fill 3-4 of this from the same hospital, or if you're just playing on the online and say, okay, let's put some figures. Today I want to be Argentina, tomorrow I want to be in Africa, and it can happen. So we've kept it in the initial phases very, very password protected, and we know the people who are responsible, who are filling it, and there is always a Global Initiative member in the countries that I spoke, 38 countries, which also coordinate. So it helps that with the scientific publication. Now, scientific publication is not just made immediately, because these are raw data, these are data which is not so good. And you can imagine it's not so simple for a health minister to look at the data and say, yes, we love this data. I mean, it's showing identifying all the gaps. The policies on that. So therefore, first of all, the data is shared with the health ministry. Many of our scientific papers, in fact, have the health minister as the author. And it started with Sierra Leone when the health minister said, the data looks horrible, but I want to be the author. Doesn't matter, at least we have a baseline. And I think that was very brave of him to put his name and say, yes, I agree with this data. So it identifies the gaps, and it also helps them to have an evidence-based planning. And that is the key for having this data. Otherwise, the data are by one NGO with another NGO, etc., or with an academia with another hospital. WHO also involves in capacity building. Capacity building has to be with local adaptation and translations. So here you see the big book which costs much more in Geneva, which was made by Southeast Asia WHO regional office for just $5, the same very book which is called the Asian edition. The next one you see is by North Korea. They made it in Korean. And the one after that was made in Mongolia by the Ministry of Health in Mongolian. And the last, which came only last week, is in Dari by Afghanistan. It is important that the capacity building has to be also not always very costly, the training. It has to be at multi-skills and also at a district and sub-district level. These are some of the examples of all the capacity building that we do. One is from Northwest Frontier in Pakistan, but you can see such simple procedures at intravenous cut down, venous cut down being shown in such a simple way, technology. What can you do? How you can contribute? You can contribute in many ways, and this is all available on our website. And the most importantly, which I want to say, is that WHO, the first step was that it made a case in the primary health care report in 2008 for strengthening health systems through surgical care. This is my plea. In order to have sustainability and scalability for emergency surgical care programs, we need to be unified. Political strategies have to be in the following action: increasing the political presence through needs and equity in emergency surgical care, raising awareness on that. Reframing the primary health care policies to include emergency surgical care. Applying key symbols, for example, using MDGs, PHCs, primary health care, health systems to create this political interest. Expanding the research, and this is where the CUGH comes. Advocate for equitable surgical care. And this is in our latest recent article in May with Charlie and myself and Hedge. So ultimately, we say that nobody is taking care of surgical care, but you know that all other programs are in the National Health Plan of countries. So therefore, our aim should be to have it, advocate that it should be in the National Health Plan. Only then we will be able to reach emergency and life-saving emergency and disability preventing emergency and surgical services to the unreached, that is the poor and the vulnerable population. Thank you very much at the end of the day to listen to me.